Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share something with you that I genuinely believe in. If you are facing divorce and feeling overwhelmed, and I know you probably are, I want you to know that there is a better way to navigate this process. And that is why I am proud to partner with Hello Divorce, founded by my friend and CEO, Erin Levine. Hello Divorce offers a structured, step-by-step approach that helps you move forward with clarity instead of chaos. You get transparent guidance, access to legal support, mediation options, financial resources, and tools designed to reduce conflict and save both time and money. It is built to help you make smart decisions from strategy, not fear. If you want a more thoughtful and efficient path forward, visit hellodivorce.com/Susan to learn more. You can be in a marriage for 20 years, build a life, raise children, share a home, a history, and a future, and still find yourself one day looking at your partner and thinking, who is this person? Because here is the truth that no one talks about until it happens. Most people who go through divorce will tell you the same thing. I was blindsided. But what if you weren't? What if the signs were there? Not loud, not obvious, but present in ways you didn't recognize at the time. Right now, a memoir is taking over the national conversation, Strangers, a Memoir of Marriage by Belle Burden. And it's not just because of the story. It's because people everywhere are seeing themselves in it. They're asking, how did she not see it? And maybe more importantly, would I? Today, we're going to talk about the red flags people miss, the patterns that show up again and again, and what you need to understand before it's too late. And I'm talking with one of the most respected divorce attorneys in the country. Welcome to Divorce and Beyond, a podcast about navigating divorce and what comes next. I'm Susan Guthrie. I'm a divorce attorney and mediator, and for more than 3 decades, I've helped people navigate divorce with clarity, strategy, and compassion. Each episode offers practical insight into the legal, emotional, and life decisions that shape your future. So let's get started. Welcome to Divorce and Beyond. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today's episode is one that I've been especially looking forward to bringing to you because it connects directly to a conversation that honestly is happening everywhere right now. If you have turned on your television, if you have watched late night news, if you watched Oprah just a couple of weeks ago, you know that the world is talking about the powerful impact of Strangers, a Memoir of Marriage by Belle Burden. And it's a story that's captured national attention, not just because of what happened, but because of how deeply it is resonating. Because, while the details may be unique, the experience is not. That feeling of being blindsided, the question of how didn't I see it? The realization, often too late, that there may have been signs all along. And that is exactly why today's conversation matters. Because what this story has done is open the door to a much bigger truth. These patterns show up every single day in relationships and in divorces. And the difference between being prepared and being blindsided often comes down to understanding what to look for, which is why I am so honored to have joining me today someone who has spent more than 4 decades not just seeing these patterns, but helping people navigate them at the highest levels. Marilyn Chinitz is a renowned, and I say it with all due credit, renowned matrimonial attorney and partner at Blank Rome, known for representing high-profile clients in some of the most complex and high-stakes divorces in the country. She is someone who has been behind and seen what's behind the curtain, and she understands the dynamics that most people don't recognize until they're already in crisis. Today, she's here to help all of us have a better understanding of the red flags, those subtle signs and the patterns that, when overlooked, can change everything. So, whether you're in a relationship, questioning one, or simply want to be more informed and aware, this is a conversation you do not want to miss. So let's get into it. Marilyn, so excited to have you here. I have been looking forward to this conversation for days now, ever since we last talked.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I adored you the minute I met you, so I'm very excited to have this time together.
Well, and we're going to have a good time. I knew it when I was actually introduced to you through one of our favorite experts here on Divorce and Beyond, Bella Gandhi, the amazing Bella Gandhi, the fairy godmother of dating. So I knew if Bella said you were fabulous, that you were going to be fabulous, and you're more than that. As I just told you, you're really, so my listeners know and understand, you're really one of the icons of family law. You are someone who, I've done my due diligence. I've done a little research. You really exemplify what the best of the practice is. You support your clients in a way that I think if someone wants to go Google you, they can see your wonderful list of clients and all of the cases that you do. But you truly help people, and so many lawyers get into this business to help people. It's delightful to be sitting across from someone who does that every day. So thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, Susan, the secret is I really love what I do. I've been practicing for 41 years, and every day is a new experience. I meet incredible people, and it's really a privilege to help people and develop the relationship of trust that I do.
You just said the magic word, I think. Everything that I read as I was reading, and your clients talk about you, they mention you. Many of your clients are celebrities or high profile figures. And so they're interviewed about their divorce or talk about it. And you're mentioned. And they all to a T are the word trust comes up, support, all of the glowing terms. So that's, most people, when they hear that someone's a divorce attorney, do the sign of the cross and run screaming from the room. You have a very different relationship with your clients, and for good reason. And in fact, that's tangentially a little bit what we're talking about here today, because you and I were talking about having you on the show, and I've been thinking about doing an episode about this new book that has come out, Strangers by Belle Burden, which, as I mentioned to you, has been emailed to me. It's flooded my inbox for 2 months now. Everybody talking about this
book.
An
amazing book. Amazing.
I read it from cover to cover. I have to tell you, I highly recommend people go read it. They're soon going to be able to watch it on Netflix, with Gwyneth Paltrow. But for me, in this world of divorce media, if that's a thing, one of the things that we know is divorce is not a bestseller. Divorce is not something that generally people flies off the shelf and becomes a New York Times bestseller on day one and gets picked up by Netflix. Yet this book has. This book has ignited just a bellwether of attention. And, Belle has been on every media outlet. I just watched her wonderful interview with Oprah. And lo and behold, then I come to look at the book again. And at the end, she acknowledges you were her attorney in the book, or in real life, and she acknowledged you in the book. Yeah.
I think it's a story that resonates with so many people who didn't know how to articulate that story. And I think that's why it is so well received, because she is helping so many people to identify difficulties in their own relationship that they either buried or they didn't want to acknowledge. And she's opening up that world and saying, these issues exist. They existed with me. And I think people can relate to that when they read her book. And I think that's why everybody is enamored with this story, a true story, because people can relate to it and she's helping people. And that to me is probably one of the most important things.
I I agree, and I hope she knows. You may have the ability to tell her, at least from everyone I have heard, and as I mentioned, the 500 emails in my inbox constantly coming. She really is helping people because she tells the story so authentically and so with such an ability for people to relate to it that it may not be something in chapter 1, but by chapter 3 people are seeing themselves or seeing something either about their current relationship or the relationship that ended in divorce or something that really just rings that bell for them. That we've all seen it, we've probably experienced it ourselves, right? Where you hear something and it rings that, like, oh, that, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
We walk through life doing a million different things every day. You and I opened this conversation before we went on, talking about how busy the day is, all the things that we do. In order to really stop and reflect about serious things, things that really affect you, you need hours. We don't have that in
We
our
do.
day. And so all of a sudden you're reading a book that's reflecting what you think, but you never articulated it. And now somebody is saying, wow, I feel that way. Wow, I went through that. I never thought about it that way. And it's opening people's eyes up. And so that's what's creating the buzz and the dialogue, because everybody can relate to the story. You know, we go about our business, we're raising families, we're raising children, we're working. How many times, have things happen during the day that maybe have bothered you, but you've kind of glossed over it because you don't have the time to really think about it, that it may have hurt you or somebody said something that bothered you, and you just kind of ignore it and we move on. This was, let me freeze the scene. Let me freeze the moment and think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what her book does.
I think very powerfully it does it through her story. But what I found reading it, and I think may have happened for you based on what we're talking about today, is w- you've seen hundreds, thousands of people through divorce, women sitting across from your desk or on your screen as you're supporting them through this process. And many of the, not specific situations, but many of the occurrences in the book that have been so relational are things that as divorce attorneys, we actually see over and over again.
So let's break it down for a moment. Someone comes into my office and they are dressed exquisitely, and you can tell that their clothing is designer. Their handbag is Hermes or whoever, and they look like they have it all together. And then you say, "Well, tell me about what your assets are." I have no idea. What do you own? You know what? I really don't know. Well, where do you live? I live on Park Avenue. And do you know what the fair market value is? No. Do you know if there's debt? No. Do you know what your expenses are? No. So you go through life and you're living this big life, but you don't have one fact about how you're living. And that to me is probably one of the biggest mistakes people make is they bury their head or they just are not interested. And when you talk to younger people, my daughter is 35, she's a lawyer. You got mail? Open it up. You saw a bank statement? Review it. You got tax returns? Go through it. Screenshot it. And you have to educate yourself.
Mhm.
And so many people, because life is so busy, They don't take the time. Now you can say, why not? Well, I trust what he's doing and I trust everything. We each have different things that we do in our life. He's out there working. He's a hedge fund manager. He's traveling. He's busting his neck. My responsibility is taking care of the kids. And no, your responsibility is in understanding all the financial circumstances. His responsibility is also helping in taking care of the children. That's a true partnership. And you have to learn that early on. It's not okay to be dismissive and say, well, he's taking care of it. And I think what happens is the rug can be pulled out from under you. And all of a sudden, this beautiful life that you think you have, number one, you may not own the assets because the assets could be held in a trust and you didn't know about it.
Right.
Number two, all those assets, they're encumbered by debt, leaving the equity in a de minimis amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you want to wake up at the end of your marriage and go, oh my God, I had no clue? Or do you want to be smart and take the time out to go through everything? And there's nothing wrong with you saying to your spouse, do me a favor. Can we sit down for one night? I don't care if we're in our pajamas or whatever. Can we go over certain things so I understand what we have? God forbid something happens. You're better off having that conversation in an intact, happy marriage than trying to figure it out with divorce lawyers. Why wait? Why defer that?
Because it's uncomfortable, right?
Well, so that's something to learn. Why is it uncomfortable? It's okay to ask questions. You're not stupid. It's okay to educate yourself. And I think that if you show in a nice way, see, everything has to be presented in a good way. If you're screaming and yelling your noise, nobody wants to hear that. If you have a little humor injected, then it creates a nice conversation. And I think you can open up the door. It's all about the communication and how you communicate. But it's very important for me when I speak to younger people, when I am asked to do a prenup, to advise them, this is what you have to do. And when you talk about a prenup, you're talking about what's going to be separate property in the marriage, what's going to be marital. But if you come into the marriage with a lot of separate property and you start commingling those assets, you lose that separate property. So education is extremely important. And, when I do a prenup, I always have my clients meet me for lunch a year later. We pull out the agreement. We go over the terms. Is there anything that needs to be altered, do you think? You just bought that new home. Was title put into joint names or in just your name or the other spouse's name? And so it's not to create conflict. It's to minimize things and make sure that things are done properly. It's all about the education.
It really is. And there's education along the way as you have these conversations. We're talking about red flags. And I think there are red flags in the air if you can't sit down with your spouse and have the conversation over the finances. Even bigger red flag is if your spouse brushes you off.
I want to see the account. I saw something came in. I know we have a CD due. Can we talk about what we're going to do with the money? Nope. No, I got it taken care of. I just saw a credit card application. Did you take out a new credit card? Can I see the statements? Why is everything being sent to your office? Can I take a look? Why don't you have a copy so I can review everything? So I can do a budget, so I understand what our expenses are, and so that we can control our expenses. These are proper discussions to have.
If you're a partner.
That's right. So that's a red flag right there. No, you can't. No, you don't need to know. That's a red flag. And I think you have to go about getting that information in an open way. I think if you're comfortable in your skin and you question things, not because you're suspicious, because you're knowledgeable and you're smart. and you want to make sure that you're in the know. Hopefully, your spouse is going to recognize you're a smart person. And I think you and I should work well. We should speak together. Maybe I can give you advice. Maybe you can give me advice. I'm married 40 years, and which is shocking for a matrimonial lawyer. Um, but it works because we may go on parallel tracks at times, but we always meet up to have conversations. And I always want to be in the know. Of course I do.
Yeah. My
Nothing gets
husband says
past
the same
me.
thing. Yeah, my husband says the same thing. So
But it creates a real bond in your relationship. Same thing with your children. Do you wanna have kids and not know what's going on in their lives? Do you wanna speak to them once a year and not know that they passed a test, they got an award, they got a medal, they got into the school? It would be unheard of.
right.
So why would you do that with the person that you're married to? That would be yeah, I can't even imagine that.
It's even perhaps a red flag that you don't feel that you can have this conversation, right? That these aren't conversations that are happening. I love that you talk about that these conversations, start with a prenup, start with before marriage. One of the reasons I've often told people that a prenup is helpful outside of the bounds of what a prenup is it brings you to the table to have these conversations at a time when so many couples just want to talk about flowers and what color the napkins are going to be and
You
their
know what
registry.
important information you get out of a prenup? Really
Uh-huh.
critical. So, I've used this example several times because it's so relevant. You have to make financial disclosure in a
Uh,
prenup, and all of a sudden, you're learning about what the other assets are of the other partner. So, if you live, you see this person that you're marrying driving a Ferrari, having a house in the Hamptons, a very expensive apartment, beautifully decorated. Now you're looking at the prenup and you're going, That's a lease? That home is rented? Wait a minute, you have 4,000,000 in debt? From what?" And all of a sudden, you're learning about a person that you were gonna marry that you knew nothing about. One striking case that I had was I was representing a woman who was getting married, very well known, and she had children that she wanted to protect in the prenup, and we asked the other side, "Please provide us with your statement of net worth," and they refused. They said, "No, we're not giving you the statement of net worth." Well, I said, "How could I possibly advise my client if you're not providing the financial disclosure that you're required to?" I looked at my client and I said, "I'm gonna tell you as I would a mother to a daughter, this is a red flag. Someone is not prepared to tell you what their financial circumstances are. You're walking into a trap." And she was smart. She ended up canceling the engagement and did not get married and never looked back. And that was a red flag right in her face, and she was smart enough to identify it and walk away from it.
Well, it was a gift, right?
It
Almost,
was a
right? And
gift.
you were a gift to give
Well,
her that
I think
advice.
I think it's important to be I am very direct. I don't mince words, and there's a reason for it because I think it's important that you know the law. B, I manage your expectations. You understand what you could get from a court and what you can. What's realistic, even though you fight like a warrior, you still have to make sure that your client, we went back to the word trust.
Yes.
You fight like an animal, like a warrior, you advocate, but you always know, and you have to share with your client what is likely and what is really pushing it because you can't be unrealistic in life, and that's the key. So I think that, prenups are great. They're especially important if it's second marriage or third marriage because you do wanna protect your children, but they give you a heads up as to who you're marrying.
Yeah, it's not just about what's in the prenup, it's everything that goes
Yeah.
on around it, and it's not that it happens a prenup doesn't happen at the beginning of the relationship, but it does happen at the beginning of the marriage, and I think the case you gave is such a stunning example of she must have been in a relationship with this person for some period of time, yet it's hard to imagine that was the first time a flag was waving. Yet there's a theme in the book that, and you hear this. How many times have you heard this across the desk? I'll take $1 for every time you've heard it, and I can retire. I was blindsided.
Oh, yes.
I was
I
blindsided.
had no clue. I was totally blindsided. I was shocked the rug was pulled out from under me.
Yep.
No, it wasn't. You were blindsided because you covered your eyes and you didn't wanna see what was going on. And I think that people need to wake up and they need to look at things. Maybe reflect. We have to take time for ourselves to reflect. The way somebody treated you, the way they spoke to you, the way they behaved. Is that acceptable to you? If I saw somebody doing that to my son or daughter, I would immediately shake them and say, "You're gonna tolerate this?"
Right.
You have to do it to yourself. It's okay. Of course, we get used to certain things so we don't shake it up. We want to minimize conflict. You don't have to create conflict. You just have to make sure that you're in the know and that you are not dismissive of really important things that you see, but you're not paying attention to.
Yeah, well, it's easy, as you've said, right, to get caught up in the busyness of life, in a marriage, in a relationship. Someone's flying around and going to work. You've got children that are very busy, and you're trying to take care of that. But I thought the book, and when you go through this with clients over and over again, you at the beginning hear that I was blindsided, and then over the period of time, it trickles out that there were often sometimes more subtle red flags. Maybe they were pink, but often there were major red flags throughout.
Let's talk about a moment how important prenuptial agreements are because they really are, they play a role in this story also. Talking about prenups, I was retained yesterday by a young woman who was marrying a man of wealth, and his family is very wealthy. And in the prenup, it says, and you waive all of your right, title, and interest to any assets, any income, any compensation, owned now or in the future. So that means that you're going to invest all these years with somebody in a marriage. And if he's running a business, if he's putting all of his efforts in it, if he's working for a fund and he gets carried interest and you supported him in the sense that you took care of the family, you're waiving that? That's unheard of. Or you have situations where I have another case where I represent another woman who's a hugely successful woman. But when she married her husband, he was very successful, big financial
Mhm.
guy, had a lot of money. She was not working. She was taking care of the children. And so all of a sudden now, 20 years later, he lost his job. He's no longer on Wall Street. He hasn't been on Wall Street. He's managed his money, which has gone up in value, but she has made hundreds of millions of dollars. But they signed a prenup. And that prenup said that his money is protected. Everything else is joint.
Because she didn't have it at the time.
She didn't have
Ooh.
it at the time. She never pulled out that prenup. And so now his money is all protected, but everything that she worked so hard during the marriage is now going to be divided. It didn't say equitably, it said 50-50.
Ooh.
And so those agreements should not be dismissed. They're really important agreements. And that's why I say it's important to meet with your client after not just a year, it could be 5 years.
Mhm.
Pull it
Sure.
out, review it, see if it's relevant so that the rug is not taken out from under you. And so that you've planned all along, because life is such, it's fluid. You have to make adjustments. Things happen in life. We can't predict it. Great things can happen. She became one of the most successful women in the country, but she forgot
Bravo, but
that she had a prenup. And there's nothing worse than a hardworking woman who took care of the kids, did everything, now has to split 50-50. with the loser who stayed home and never went back to the workforce, it's like a stab in the heart. It is.
Very much so.
Yeah. And here is a brilliant woman, a businesswoman. So, but too busy to stop for a moment and see what was going on and pull out the agreement. Look, I always say smart people get great professionals around them. You just, a financial advisor, a forensic to look through my accounts and see where the flow of monies are, an attorney just to give you some baseline information. You know, we have doctors, right? Thank God we've got great doctors and anything happens, but you've got to surround yourself with good professionals and educate yourself. And I think you can do that long before any issues in your marriage happen.
Oh, and during the marriage.
Definitely, you're required to have it during the marriage.
But let's talk about, because there's a phenomenon that happens, I think, that we see during divorce, or I'm sorry, during marriages, where, say with your client who, had she picked up the prenup and wanted to renegotiate it, do a postnup, get it amended, we see that happen very often, or even more often, and I would say it's with female clients, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to cause problems, and so they just leave it be. Or flip of that, their spouse wants to change things up, and they go ahead and just sign it because everything's fine, and I trust him, and I don't want to rock the boat. That's in the face of even getting really good legal advice and financial advice.
So I'll give you an example, and this is something that happens very innocently. People of wealth correctly, smartly create trusts. They're advised properly by trust and estate lawyers. Look, you can take this asset, and it could be a GP interest that, could grow or not grow, a carried interest that's not worth anything today, but it could be worth a lot, or part of the business. And you say to your spouse, I spoke to trust and estate counsel. It makes sense, given the fact that this asset's probably going to grow tremendously in value. Let's gift that to the trust for the benefit of our kids. Now, two things happen. Number one, you then go to a trust and estate attorney, the same lawyer.
Right.
That's a no-no, as far as I'm concerned. It happens frequently because
very frequently.
Your interests may not be aligned. Because by gifting an asset to the trust, you're taking that asset out of the marital estate and you're putting it into a totally different entity. It no longer belongs to you. You don't own it. Now, so many people don't know that, and they need to be educated about that. It is correct that you should put assets that are going to grow in value because they're going to grow tax-free. But again, you've got to be educated. And so it's important to understand these things. And it's innocent. It's not because I want to hide assets. That's not the reason. It's because I want these assets that are going to grow in value to grow for our descendants, for our children and our children's children.
Right. It's legacy.
Correct. Now, where courts say, oh, no, this is not good, is when you are devious and diabolical and you take marital assets on the heels of a divorce and you start transferring them into a trust. That gives the court the ability to either claw back or to say, you know what, I'm not going to touch a trust, but I'm going to give the wife 100% of the marital assets because of what you did. And we saw that recently in New York in a case that was written by Judge Waterman Marshall, where she awarded the wife 100% of the marital assets because of the funny business that was done, allegedly, by the husband regarding what was in the trust. Use of a trust as an alter ego. So you moved assets into a trust, but you have your hand in the piggy bank, and you're using it for your own benefit. That's a no-no. But if you are smart in your marriage and your spouse says to you, look, let's go to a trust and estate attorney, be smarter. Say, I love that idea. let's go. And then I would like to speak to my own attorney to make sure that our interests are aligned, and I really understand this.
I'm gonna go talk to Marilyn, right? That's a good idea. You've raised something here that I also think is very important. You were talking about the funny business that people get up to when they're getting divorced, and I think that this is something it's actually a pretty common phrase that you hear from people. You don't divorce the same person you married,
Oh, boy, yeah.
right? They turn into well, title of the book, right? A complete stranger
Yeah,
so often, and you can't
yeah.
understand who is this
Or
person,
were they always like that,
right?
but you didn't pick that up? And I think that's really the question. You know how many times in a relationship you're talking to your spouse, you're seeing behaviors that you don't like? There's a screaming element, or they're doing something in business that's kind of underhanded, that's not honest, but it doesn't
Mhm.
affect you directly, and you don't think about it. But those are characteristics that are red flags. And so, did you marry someone who became a stranger, or did you marry someone who always had these qualities? You just didn't see it. And that's really the question, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when you go through life and all of a sudden you see the way some people behave in divorce, and it can be really horrific. It's shocking that you could have loved somebody, had children with that person, created a life, and that person is looking to hurt you, sabotage you, even destroy you. That's just shocking.
And almost impossible to comprehend in that moment, right? It puts you back on your heels. We've seen so many people who are there. I mean, how often do you hear it was hard to get out of bed, even, in those first early days of the divorce? And it's part of it is sometimes I think the vision that we have or the version that we see of that person is so suddenly dropped away. But I think you're right. They say in dating, this is one of Bella's stories actually, or one of her red flags when you're dating, if they treat the waiter poorly or leave a bad tip or are dismissive of somebody else on that date or do something dismissive, they're showing you who you are. And I love that you point out that your spouse may not be doing things that directly affect you right now, but it's in their behaviors with others. But the minute you become an other, which you do during divorce very often, the tables turn.
Absolutely. Those are the characteristics that you have to look at. Now people can change too. They can change for the better. There are people who are, rough and tumble, and all of a sudden, with the right partner, they soften, they're more thoughtful, they're better parents. So I give people that credit. I really do. But I think you have to be honest with yourself and really see people for who they are.
It's really important to understand if someone changes, if your spouse can change, will change, it won't be because you changed them. It won't be because you wished them into it. It won't be because your divorce attorney made them change or a court made them change.
They emulate good things. So, and I'll say this openly. My husband is one of the most wonderful human beings. But I was a very doting mother. I was working full time and I was hands-on, and he's born in Sweden, different mentality in terms of parenting, and I respected the fact that he was a little more hands off. I was not. I was full blown on top of everything. Now, 40 years later, he has picked up my personality. I've gone to his personality. And so you learn, by emulation and what works, and these could be good things. These could be positive things. You have to look at, does the person gaslight you? Is he always
No.
criticizing you? Always putting you down in public? Does he not elevate you? Then those are the ingredients for a really bad marriage and an even worse divorce.
It's exactly where I was taking that sentence myself. Yes,
Yeah.
an even worse divorce. And we've seen those. And unfortunately, I always say there's nothing about divorce that usually brings out the best in people.
In 2009, I uncovered a murder. It's a crazy story, but I didn't know the woman that got killed. She was in the middle of a divorce, and her husband was excluded from the apartment. She had an order of protection. She dropped the order of protection, provided he moved out. He moved out to the apartment across the hall.
No.
And when I met with the family, I was brought in for custody of the kids away from the father. And
Mhm.
I spent time with the family asking them, "Well, what was he like? How did he behave?" He gaslighted her. He always put her down. She never felt good enough. All of those things that I heard that created this toxicity, this animate ultimately her death.
Yes.
You wonder why people go through that and don't immediately get out of a bad relationship. I'm a proponent of marriage. I am, by example. But when things are not good, you are so much better off getting out of that toxic relationship. And there is a wonderful life after divorce
And that is why the podcast is Divorce and Beyond,
and
right? I
beyond.
wanted people to focus on that beyond.
One of the greatest compliments, I'll never forget this. This was many years, 30 years ago. I represented this man who was very, very wealthy, and he was married to a beautiful woman. She was Romanian, very elegant, and I liked her. And he was very aggressive, and he I did a very good
You had to manage your client.
I had to manage him, but I also did a very good job for him. And a
Mhm.
year later, my secretary comes into my office and she says, "Marilyn, so and so is here." And I said, "I can't see her." "She has flowers for you. She wants to just have a brief word with you." Now, the case was over. Came
Mhm.
into my office, and she was so lovely and elegant. She said, "I just wanna thank you. You inspired me. Here was this woman, I knew you had children, you were a fierce advocate, even if it was against me, and I admired how you were a lawyer and what you were doing. I went to paralegal school." And she shows me her certificate as a paralegal.
Oh,
And it was such an accomplishment for her, and I was so happy for her. But that's life. Life can take so many different turns, but there is life. I'm not a believer in staying in bed and feeling, the pity party. Get out, do things, because that's the best medicine you will ever have. Make plans for yourself. And so many of my clients have reinvented themselves. They've become powerhouses in business, they've become artists, speakers. It's so wonderful to see. That is why I do my birthday lunch that we talked about
yes.
with 68 women, former clients, new clients, business women. There's plastic surgeons, there's so many people because they share with each other the inspiration of living. And it's a great thing. And I think that these are really healthy steps to take.
It's amazing. One of the reasons I started the podcast and, as I said, called it Divorce and Beyond is because after so many years in the world as a divorce attorney and mediator, I saw what happens for people after the divorce is done. I got that window into it, and then I got it myself, and am now in a second marriage that is the one along the lines of yours. We're in that phase of turning into each other that you just mentioned about yourself, right? But I wanted people to know because when you're going through your own divorce, you're so very focused on the divorce,
Yes.
the difficulties of that process, the all of those things that it's very hard to see what's beyond.
And I don't
Yet
I don't
there's so much.
underestimate for 1 second the difficulty. What could be more important than you are disrupting what you have known for so many years, your home, your children, your finances, your stability, your community sometimes, your social
Everything.
relationships. And so there are winners and there are those who are not winners. And I think you're a winner because you put yourself in that direction, and it does take effort and a lot of effort. But again, use the support that you have around. Those are great ways to build yourself back up. And I give people tremendous credit. And it's not just women, it's men too.
Oh, yeah. But even look around the people around you, even the people I love the story of, the lady from Romania who went and got her paralegal certificate. She looked around and took her inspiration from a strong and amazing woman that she saw and took that forward into her beyond. And I love
It
that.
was a
That's
great
just a beautiful
compliment. It
story.
was.
It is.
Yeah.
It really
I
is.
love
It is. The one that I had was I handled a divorce. I was representing the husband. He was a little difficult, needed a little managing, but we managed to come to an agreement. And in the end, I do think it was, something that worked for everyone. And then the wife had a divorce party after
yeah.
and sent me an invitation to her divorce party. And I was like, I cannot attend your divorce party, but that's the first time that had ever happened to me in my
At
career.
a celebration, right? And
Yes,
that's
yes, and they are still friends. They had a very contentious divorce, but turned into one of those couples that do holidays together with
which
their new
I
spouses.
think that is unbelievable, and hats off to them.
Yes.
I had a client, and I love her dearly, and she said, "Okay, here's the mandate. You gotta get me divorced, and I have to remain friends with him." So that was a tough assignment because I couldn't destroy him.
You couldn't use the big guns, just the little soft
Well, I
guns.
still use the big guns, but we ended up resolving, and not only have they stayed together in business and in raising their kids, but he has referred me a lot of business. So, I think that that was also quite a compliment. But I think there is a skill set in doing what we do, and you know that because you practiced for so many years. It's working hard, and you can't underestimate that. You've gotta be not just prepared, you've gotta be over prepared. When you
Oh,
walk
yes.
into court, you've gotta know your facts. You've gotta know who the judge is and how you're gonna present in front of the judge. If you take on a matter, you owe it to that client to give 1,000% and then some. You can only do that if you take that client in your heart personally and understand what's important to them, what's important in the case, and then really prepare well. And I think it's a privilege, and that's why I love doing what I'm doing.
No. Well, and you, as I said, one of the icons.
Makes me sound so old.
Well, no, icon in a positive way, icon in a young and beautiful way, right? In a way that, is helping people every day. What's beautiful about how you practice is you have years of supporting people in this very, really in the moment way that doesn't end. You and I both know a million divorce attorneys. How many of them do you know who have 60 some odd of them come to lunch every year on their
0.
birthday?
0.
Right. I know you and I know one other.
Yeah, and it's the continuity and the continuation of the relationship because you are so invested in what they
Mhm.
do, and you become not just their friend, but you provide a guiding light, and I'm all about connection. To me, that's very important. So if you need something, if it's a doctor or it's a medical issue, I know a huge community, I will reach out. I can't tell you the number of hours that I spend just to help people who
Mhm.
have a question. That's what we do in life. And I think when you do that, you get back 10 times more. That's who I am. I'm not going to change. I feel very blessed to be able to resonate and connect with people. And I love Belle. Belle described me in a very lovely way. I can't remember everything, but she said, maternal, elegant, and tough. And that really captured it. Again, I think it's a privilege to do what I do.
Well, the people that you help, you support, they are very lucky to have you in their corner, and I'm sure that is a large part of the reason that they are still there in your life. I do want to make sure I gave the name of the firm and all that information, Blank Rome in New York City. But what is the best way for people to reach out to you, find out more? I will have the links to the website in the show notes, but any other information you want to share?
Sure. So I am a partner of Blank Rome. They can go on the website of Blank Rome. They'll see me there. They can email me, and I'm happy to connect and appreciate everybody's, questions or whatever it is that they would like to address.
Well, I can say you are one of those abundance mindset people, right? You give, you share, you help people, you connect people, and that does come back to you, I hope, 100-fold. So
It's
thank
how
you
we
so
live our
much.
lives, and I'm sure you do the same thing because you are helping people by your podcast, because you're sharing the accomplishments of people, and that gives people encouragement and incentive. That's hugely valuable.
Well, and you too by coming on the show. So thank you very much. Think of all the nuggets of wisdom that people are getting out of our ability to talk about this on a podcast and share all your years of insights. I very much appreciate your taking the time, Marilyn.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
This was a wonderful talk. Thank you. Listeners, before we close, as always, I want to take a moment to highlight a few of the key takeaways from this conversation with Marilyn, because there was so much here that I know is going to resonate with you all. This conversation may have been sparked by a story that's getting lots of attention right now, but what Marilyn has shared with us today makes one thing very clear. These situations are not as rare as we might want to believe. So here are a few things I hope you take with you. First, most people who feel blindsided later will tell you that there were signs. They just didn't recognize them for what they were at the time. Second, red flags are not always dramatic. In fact, they're often subtle, and they show up in communication, in behavior, and very often in how information, especially financial information, is shared or avoided. Third, trust in relationship should never require you to disengage from understanding your own life. Being informed is not a lack of trust. It is part of being an equal partner. And finally, awareness is not about creating fear. It is about giving yourself the clarity and confidence to ask questions, stay engaged, and make informed decisions. Because I know this can be difficult to assess just by listening to the episode, as always, I've created a couple of resources to help you take this a step further. The first one is the free downloadable resource. It's a guide called The Red Flags You Didn't See Checklist, which walks you through many of the patterns we talked about today and gives you a way to reflect more intentionally on your own situation. I've also put together a companion article that goes deeper into the topic, including insights drawn from this broader conversation happening right now and what we're seeing play out in real life. Both of these are designed to help you move from just hearing this information to actually using it. You can find both the checklist and the full article on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com. I'll also have links in the show notes. And as always, listeners, my goal here is not to alarm you, but to inform you, to help you understand what so many people only realize in hindsight, and to give you the tools to move forward with greater awareness and confidence. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you can get through this and you can come out stronger on the other side. Marilyn even said it in the episode. Until next time, listeners, I'll see you soon. If today's episode helped you see something more clearly, take a moment to reflect on one insight you can carry forward. one decision you can approach differently, one next step that feels more grounded. Divorce is not a failure. It is about facing reality and choosing a healthier path forward for yourself and your family. You can find show notes, trusted divorce resources, and expert guidance at divorceandbeyondpod.com. If this episode was helpful, follow the podcast and share it with someone who may need support right now. I'm Susan Guthrie. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next time with more clarity, insight, and support on Divorce and Beyond.